Welcome to the Bushy Brows Podcast, where three guys who mostly get along dive into tough topics, challenge cherry-picked facts, and prove you don't have to agree on everything to have a great conversation. No punches pulled, no easy answers, just honest discussion with a side of humor. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, this is Mike from the Bushy Brows Podcast Show. Every week, Joe, Dave, and I discuss issues in the news. We're three guys with sometimes strong opinions, but we also try hard to stay curious and open-minded. Thanks for joining us. So, Joe, I heard you mentioning when we were kind of getting ready to start the podcast, you mentioned moderation is a very important thing to you, and I would like to kind of get your feelings on that.
Yeah, so moderation basically encompasses all things, right? There's a moderation for everything, good, bad, indifferent. And the moderation level for everything that we have is different. Some things moderation level could be a lot of, some things moderation level could be not so much of or zero to be healthy. One of the things that I'd like to talk about is my daughter decided that she wanted to moderate her diet. And she went to a vegan diet and moderated basically took the meat and everything else down to zero and tried to do that. I was a very supportive father. I let her do everything that she could possibly do to follow her goals, dreams, and aspirations. And that winded up with me sitting in the hospital, making sure she was okay because she had serious health implications from cutting meat out of her diet. So the healthy moderation for her was not zero for me. She ended up eating fish and eggs and dairy to add to her diet. She didn't go back to eating meat, but she added fish and eggs and dairy to her diet, and then she was a lot better. But moderation for that topic, again, not zero. Zero was not okay for her. I'm not saying that zero is not okay for somebody else. We all have different things. I have a lot of friends too. I've watched a lot of close friends pass away from cirrhosis of the liver from not moderating their alcohol enough, right? So that's a horrible thing when you watch people pass away from that disease. That's not a fun disease to pass away from. I don't think that the moderation for alcohol is zero. I do believe that it's different for everybody. I do believe that we all need to find our own healthy levels of moderation, and there isn't things from other people that can influence that.
All right, so Joe,
Yes.
I'm going to take offense at your moderation statement. So
Yes.
I understand, different strokes for different folks, and everybody is doing everything different. The three of us have talked about this bit about a lot of people want to put the world into black and white. It's good or
Yep.
it's bad. So I understand what you're talking about moderation. Sometimes life's a lot more gray than black and white. Your daughter might have certain, nutritional needs that weren't being met. If all of a sudden she dumped all the, animal-based products out of her diet, I'd be curious what that is. I mean, I'm a 65-year-old guy, and I haven't eaten meat and dairy in 11 years. And same with my wife. I've got no health issues.
Mm-hmm.
But per your point, my nutritional needs might be different than your daughter's. So I'm not going to judge your daughter saying she did it wrong. I might say, actually, that makes me really curious about exactly why she ended up in a hospital. Did she have predisposing factors going on? What was she deficient in? And but I will tell you, I got a buddy of mine, and he's a bit of a smart ass, like the three of us. And whenever I try and take a moderate kind of reasonable tone that you're suggesting, Joe, he
Mm-hmm.
says, do you have splinters in your butt? I said, what are you talking about? He goes, sitting on the fence all the time. You got splinters in your butt? I said, what? He said, my dad taught me take a stand, man, make a position. He says, so, moderate. That just sounds like airy-fairy to me. So I think it's really important that we distinguish between, reasonable or analytical and not being able to formulate an opinion, because a lot of people interpret moderate different ways.
Right. So, that's a great point. And that's exactly what I was trying to put across, Dave. Your moderation for things are different than my moderation for things. are different than Mike's moderation for things. And we all have different needs in our lives. I may need more moderation for happiness today, right? But too much happiness is not a good thing either. And people need to understand that. I need moderation for how much fat I eat in my food, right? Not enough, pretty bad. Too much, pretty bad. There's everybody has a different level. My daughter's levels of what she needed for her nutrition different than yours. Her calorie intake was different. Her needs are different. Her age was different, right? She didn't try this at 65. She tried it at 16. So there are things that human bodies need that are different. Unfortunately, the groups that she were in that were recommending to go to that diet, they weren't nutritionists that understood that. They were just people who cared. And I get that. And I'm very thankful for that there's people out there that care. Probably not the healthiest decision to promote.
Dave, you've been doing this for quite some time. I have a feeling you do this more scientifically than Joe's daughter.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling like you make sure that you have the correct protein, especially because meat products typically higher in protein. Is there science with what you do?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm probably closer to all our listeners than, I don't know, some analytical scientific guy. I mean, there's a 400-pound fat guy inside me trying to get out at any one time. Okay. I grew up in a meat and potato diet. And I was a scuba instructor in my 20s. Let me tell you, scuba diving is an awesome sport, but it's like riding a motorcycle. It doesn't burn a lot of calories. There's a lot of fat motorcycle people riding around on cool bikes. There's a lot of fat scuba divers swimming around too. So, I got married, and my wife and I started just looking for things to do together. And my wife went, "Oh, I've always wanted to run a marathon." I'm like, crap. Right. So here we go. So, whatever you do to hang around people you love. I trained for a marathon when I was 34 years old, and I lost 40 pounds. Didn't change my diet. Kept on eating. When I got hungry, I ate. When I got really hungry after a 10-mile run, I ate a lot. But I dropped 40 pounds. And then we trained for another marathon. Then my wife said, always want to do an Ironman. I'm like, gosh, here we go again. So trained for an Ironman. And so, but here's the kicker. So I'd done, 6 marathons and 4 Ironman. And, then a year or two, I kind of like tailed back the training. And my wife and I were in Italy. And I went in a store. By the way, there's an answer in here. So hang in there. I went into a store in southern Italy because I was sweating through all my shirts. And I don't know if either of you guys ever been to Italy?
No.
No.
Well, I know you're American, so probably you don't get out of your own, what is it, your state? Is that the situation there, or your own
States
town?
are like provinces. Yeah.
So I'm in the south of Italy, and I walk into a store, and I pull out a shirt, because back in Canada, I'm a men's large, and I pull out an Italian men's large, and there's about 3 inches of skin between the button and the buttonhole down my chest, right? So I pull out an extra large off the rack, and now there's 1.5 inches of skin. I had to wait till I get back to Rome. I bought an XXXL shirt that was the equivalent to a men's large in Ontario. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is, I got home and I said to Barbara, I felt disgusted I was wearing a triple XL shirt, and she said, well, your diet needs improving. I went, come on. You and I eat mostly chicken and fish. I mean, I've done like 4 marathons, like 4 Ironman. I mean, what more can I do? She goes, you like to eat? And I said, yeah. So she said, maybe you should join Weight Watchers. And, I don't know about all your listeners, but I think Weight Watchers is a great organization. But I'm a typical guy, and I said, I'm not going in for weekly weigh-ins and standing on a scale and talking about my feelings, all these people. So she said, well, they have an app. Best thing I ever did. I bought the Weight Watchers app. I downloaded it, and they dumb it down scientifically for guys like me, Joe. And they said, how much do you want to lose and how long you want to lose it for? So I said, I want to drop 40 pounds over the course of the year. And they said, you're allowed 8 points in a day. So all I did was the only thing I ever did was just keep track of everything I ate. And within 3 days, I realized I was eating way too much for what my goals were. But I didn't change what I was eating. I hadn't gone vegan. I was still eating meat and dairy and milkshakes and cookies, but it just gave me this guideline. And all I had to do was commit to putting everything I ate in that app. And after 3 days, I started eating differently. So I know, Joe, you were talking about moderation. Mm-hmm. I'm going to add something to it, and that is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And too many people they eat when they get hungry, they eat when they get bored, they eat when they're emotionally upset. They eat because they turn on the TV and that advertisement says, here's a triple burger, and if you eat one, you'll be popular, and people will love you and taste delicious, and it all does. So you're eating like 6 times the amount of calories you really need to. And it's like, yeah, so all I did is I dropped 40 pounds in a year just by being careful about what I ate. Is that science? Well, Weight Watchers did all the science. All I had to do was just stick to the system, and that's what I did.
And I know you guys at home can't see Dave, and Dave is a very good-looking, healthy-looking individual. So I believe that he knows what he's talking about. Just from going off that, I've also heard him multiple times talk about nutrition-based stuff, which leads me to the conclusion that he doesn't know what he's talking about with what he needs. And I know that he has done the homework to know what he needs to do for himself. My daughter, unfortunately, on the other hand, didn't. And that's the problem. Like that's why her moderation was different. She didn't have the knowledge at 16 to be able to make those decisions for herself. As a dad, I wanted her to be able to make those decisions, but I also underestimated the moderation key and the ability that she had on figuring her own stuff out. And that's what I wanted to point out.
So really, she didn't moderate at all. She just went extreme.
That's right.
And so you're talking about maybe easing your way into that, maybe starting to have meatless Mondays and Fridays, and then increase a day and watch your health. And Dave, I still think like probably if you had a salad, you might have a source of protein on it, like tofu or otherwise. Is that right? Do you mix in sources of protein that are meat-like?
Yeah, so here's the really interesting thing is I think sometimes you got to get out of a system to be able to really understand what kind of system you're living in. You got to move out of the United States, live in another country, and after a couple of years, you look back and go, man, things are weird in the U.S. because I was kind of like brainwashed by all this stuff. But you got to get out of the U.S. and live somewhere else for a while to turn around and go, things were weird back there. And there's no different than diet. I haven't eaten meat for 11 years. One of the first questions people ask me is, well, where do you get your protein? And my response, because I'm a humorous guy, is, you ever see a cow? And they go, yeah. I said, what does a cow eat? Grass. A lot of meat on a cow, right? And they go, yeah. I said, you don't see a cow eating meat or tofu or chicken or fish to get meat, right? No. The cow eats grass. I said, yeah. So proteins are made up of amino acids, and vegetables and fruits have amino acids in it. So for the most part, I don't put stuff, quote, on top of my salad to get protein. The salad itself provides the amino acids, and my body uses those things and constructs the protein. Yeah, I aim for a balanced diet, and so I will sometimes put tofu on a salad or beans and things like that. And per Joe's point, a lot of people have different nutritional needs. Some people need a little bit more protein. Some people need a little less. There's a type of nutrient called B12, and it's not common a lot in fruits and vegetables. So my wife and I will take a supplement, B12 supplement, make sure we have enough B12 in our system. But just like you would take a multivitamin, right? So, but I'll tell you what's fascinating about what I did. One of the reasons my wife wanted to switch to no meat and dairy is she was getting pain in her knuckles and her hands. I don't know if any of our listeners or our podcasts find they're getting pains in their knees or their hands. When they reach a certain age, they start getting this aching feeling. So we'd read that if you have a high fiber diet, your gut biome, the type of good bacteria, change, and that impacts your inflammation. So my wife, as soon as we dumped the meat and dairy out of our diet, within 3 weeks, all the pain in my wife's knuckles went away. She hasn't had it for 11 years. No pills. No, nothing like that. She just upped her fiber intake. So, back to your question again, most people are, they're not they're not protein deprived in North America. We get way too much protein in our diet. They're fiber deprived. We eat too much of a processed diet. That's the real issue. So, yeah, I got shoulder surgery tomorrow because I've had, a lot of swimming over 20 years. My orthopedic surgeon who did my other shoulder said, you're like the fastest healer I've ever seen. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, and he said, you healed twice as fast from your last surgery. Then he said, I'm looking forward to doing your other shoulder. And I said, okay. And he goes, so what prescriptions are you on? I said, I'm not on anything. He goes, you're 65, you're on no prescriptions. I went, nope. He goes, nothing for your heart, nothing for cholesterol, no, nothing for diabetes. I said, no, I'm not on anything. He goes, well, doctors love guys like you because you're boring. He says, there's no surprises when we're doing the stuff on you. So am I a walking, talking, I don't know, role model for fitness? No, I got a pudgy gut. But I think if I did one thing right, I really tried to focus on eating what we call whole food, plant-based diet. So I really, about 20% of my diet is still, like I'll have, some potato chips or some cookies. But yeah, for the most part, just whole foods.
Now, I should point out to everyone listening that I do not have a problem with people who want to be vegan. I actually find it very commendable to people that do that for their own personal beliefs. I don't have a problem with people who want to be 100% carnivore diet. I really don't have a problem with anyone's personal choices of diets. I know we razz Dave a little bit just because he's the unique dieter among us. But I actually think that it's a good thing that he does what he loves and that he preaches about it. And he doesn't overly preach negatively. He preaches positively, which leads me to my next point. I think a large majority of our diets that we choose as individuals, first and foremost, the most important thing of that diet is positive thought. So as long as we believe in what we're doing and are positive about what we're doing, we're going to see positive benefits from that.
I was going to circle back. I seem to remember in the back of my mind that there is a disease called gout. And gout affected the very wealthy, I think, maybe in Victorian times or earlier. And the gout came from chemicals in meats and having a diet too rich in meat. So, Dave, I almost wonder if you were experiencing that in some ways.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Look, part of what three of us are trying to do with the Bushy Brow podcast is, replace judgment with curiosity. So some things I don't know enough to make an informed decision on. I'd have to do some research on gout. I believe it has to do with uric acid crystals. But yeah, a lot of it's tied to a very rich diet, high in butter and fat and meat. They used to call it the royal disease because really, wealthy people got it. It's extremely painful, apparently, and you get it a lot in your lower extremities. And it's, what we term a lifestyle-related illness, right? Because it really has to do with your diet or exercise or lack thereof. But look, per your point, Joe, I have a lot of empathy or sympathy for people who are struggling with cholesterol and diabetes and high blood pressure. There's so much I admire about American culture. You guys are a can-do type of country. You can do it. Anybody can be president. Look at Donald Trump, man. Anybody can be president. Everybody can rise up. So that whole concept of personal responsibility, absolutely, I'm total on board with that. Nobody likes to be controlled by big government or big pharma or whatever else. But as far as nutrition is concerned, for the most part, and I'm including Canadians as well and Mexicans, we all are. We're controlled. And we're told, how much to eat, and we're surrounded by advertisements. It's kind of like going to Vegas. It's you against this multi-billion-dollar industry designed to separate you from your money, and you think it's a level playing field. It is not. So, whether it's gout, whether it's diabetes, I have a lot of empathy, and it upsets me a lot when I see, people in their 40s and 50s having pain, constant pain, not because of something they were born with or genetic, but because of what they're eating. Boy, they subsidize a lot of things for the consumer, but fresh fruits and vegetables ain't one of them.
Yes. Do you know what the number one killer is worldwide?
Heart disease?
Mosquitoes.
It's actually sugar.
Oh, we got three now. Somebody's going to be out there Googling it.
Wow.
Is it heart disease? Is it mosquitoes or is it sugar?
It's sugar. Sugar and all the diseases that it brings into your life are the number one killer by large, worldwide, way over anything else. You go to the WHO's data and check out all the governmental stats, right? Because we trust the stats from the government, right?
Yeah.
Or if you check that
Well, I
out,
mean,
sugar.
from which government?
Yeah, sure, any of them.
Well, look, I mean, one thing I hear a lot in the U.S., being a Canadian, we're overloaded with U.S. news, is how much don't trust anybody because they're all trying to control you. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you talked about earlier about Dave, you have some scientific basis for what you do. Yeah, I'm a very questioning guy, and I can't know everything. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a surgeon. But what I try and do is do some research and ask people who are experts and then get 3 or 4 different opinions. And I always try and keep an open mind. Like if I went to the doctor tomorrow and they say you have a nutritional deficiency and you need to augment it, then I would probably do that. But right now, every time I go in for a checkup, they said, hey, keep on doing what you're doing because you've got no problems at all.
Mhm.
So, unless I hear different, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing.
And that's as good as it gets. Nothing to correct. You'll never feel better.
But I like your point because I don't go out there, insulting other people as to, I don't know, what they say. I heard somebody recently said, if the right made vaccines political, then the left made obesity political. You're not allowed to say anything about people who are overweight because that's called fat shaming, and we're not allowed to fat shame people. So I don't talk about obesity. I talk about health. And if somebody looks at their kids and realizes to their horror, your children aren't going to live as long as you are, that's not fat shaming. That's a health observation. So maybe, somebody listening to this podcast goes, wow, we got to do something because, my doctor's saying my child's on all these medications. My children aren't going to live as long as I do.
Yeah.
Nobody can argue with that, right?
Yeah, nobody's going to argue with that. I believe that everything that we talk about in our daily lives, whether we realize it or not, is very political based because politics is based on a series of ethics. So everything has an ethical decision in our life, right? From overeating to the things that we do to how we treat others to no matter how you look at it, it's all based on that. So it may not be directly related to what we voted for last time in the polls, but it has some politics to it.
Really bugs me sometime when I hear people go, trust scientists, trust doctors. It's like, I don't.
No, yeah.
I mean, I met doctors who are ill-informed. I met scientists who their theories were disproved. I don't quote trust scientists, trust all doctors. I trust the scientific method, which is take a look at, evidence and try and figure out what's best for someone like me. But I don't put all my trust in one person's hand. I don't quote trust pharmaceutical companies, but in my life, I have taken painkillers made by pharmaceutical companies and they've worked pretty well, but I've read the instructions on how to use them and I've talked to my doctor about contraindications. So people always want to politicize this thing, which is, I trust science or I don't trust science. I don't think either is the answer.
I find it interesting that the United States is probably one of the only countries, there's only a few, that allow for advertising of prescription medications on TV. And I think people around the world don't think about it. They don't hear about ask your doctor if whatever is right for you, because truly the doctor is deciding what's right for you without showing it on TV.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of doctors are human beings like all the rest of us, right? You got good ones, bad ones, and a whole bunch in the middle. When my wife and I got to move to New York City a couple of years ago, somebody said to me, you got to find a family doctor. I said, yeah. They said, go in and ask the receptionist how many patients the doctor sees a day. I said, why? She says, if the doctor's seeing more than 30 patients a day, just turn around and find another doctor because they can't spend enough quality time. They said, it has to do with their incentives. I said, I don't understand. They said, when the doctor, says you need to take some tests, ask 2 questions. Do I really need this test and will my insurance cover it? Those are 2 questions nobody usually asks in Canada. I said, I don't understand. Why am I asking these 2 questions? They said, because a lot of doctors get incentives from labs. So they have arrangements with labs. So the more tests they can send to the lab, the more money the doctor's office makes. I went, are you kidding me? They went, no. They said, so you got to ask, are they making you take that test because you really medically need it? And will your insurance cover it? They said, memorize those 2 questions. And as a Canadian, I'm like, wow, I never even thought of asking those questions. So I can see that trust thing in the United States. If you're living in a for-profit system, yeah, you got to be really skeptical about the people around you. I understand that now.
Guys, over the holidays, I've heard a lot of the Grinch song. And actually, over time, I feel like the Grinch is becoming more and more and more famous and interesting, because you used to see people dressed up like Santa. Now you see people dressed up like Grinch. So there's a popularity, there's a trend. I've seen 2 things that actually concern me a little bit and made me think deep. One of which was a song, and I'll put it in the show notes. It uses bad language, and it really is a guy singing the Grinch song that we all know, but he's really going over the top, and it's a video, and it is more insulting. It is more over the top even than the video or the existing one is. And it uses some bad words. Viewer discretion advised. But the truth is, this guy has a song written about him. Another thing I saw was just a cartoon, and it was talking about this, and how can the Grinch be a good person when every 5 minutes there's this guy that's just totally singing a song about how bad he is. When I put this all together, it makes me wonder, is the Grinch a good dude now? Is he a good guy now? He had a minute of epiphany. He felt sorry. But what does it take for the Grinch to be forgiven? And what does it take in general to be forgiven? And is he now free and clear? Like, now he's a good guy. Let's invite him to watch a national championship game and, have beer and chips. Joe, what do you think?
I think that we often tend to put people in categories based off of the last most important event that they have done. So you can have somebody that has had a lifetime of doing good, but then they all of a sudden have one bad thing, and that's what we remember them for, right? Or vice versa. And I think that the Grinch is falling into that category as well. He had a lifetime of bad decisions, and then all of a sudden he saved Christmas, so now he's the hero. That's basically what I think about that story.
Would you invite him over, or would you leave him in his cave?
I would invite him over, but I also would invite him over not because he's a good or a bad person, because I think that he would be a fun, entertaining evening. So I'm probably not the best example for that, if that makes sense.
But that's an interesting question about, should you judge somebody based on the worst decision they ever made? I guess my answer would be, well, what decision was that? I mean, Hitler's dog loved him. And Hitler was, quite candidly beloved by not all, but many German people who looked at him as a strong person who could lead them out of a depression and restore their national pride and bring back the economy and get jobs for them. And, why wouldn't they have supported a guy like that when they felt betrayed by their previous government? So would I invite Hitler over for dinner because, he was beloved by the German people? Well, you got that balance, the fact that, so millions of people got taken to concentration camps and murdered, and his country invaded many other people, and millions more died. So how do you balance the good versus the bad in his life? I know that's an extreme example, but there was a guy in Canada I know, he was descended from Germans, and his grandparents still had Adolf Hitler's picture framed in their bedroom in Toronto. And this is 10 years ago. I wouldn't have Adolf Hitler's picture on my wall, but neither would I have Pol Pot's or Stalin's or pretty well anybody who committed that kind of mass murder. But there are people around the world who feel that way about the United States of America because their experience with the U.S. is their relatives died in a war that was supported by the United States. So, I don't know, am I being moderate or am I being wishy-washy? But I guess my answer is it all depends.
Yeah, Hitler also didn't just make one decision at the very end of his life that killed millions of people. That was a carefully thought out and planned, detailed plan that took several years. So I think that maybe the correlation between Hitler and the Grinches, and again, you did specify that you were going for an extreme example, but I've seen a lot of people that were really good their entire lives, and then all of a sudden they make one mistake at the end, and now people are going to remember them for that, right? Or I know people that have been like really crappy human beings, and then all of a sudden redeem themselves with a final act or whatnot. And it does question: do we look at every a person's entire picture, or do we just look at the one thing that we're going to remember them by?
Look, I want to live in a world where forgiveness exists, right? So if I screw up and I've been a Grinch, I've been a nasty guy, and then one day I wake up and I went, I want to make things better. I want to start being a good person. I want to live in a world where at least I got a shot at redemption. Maybe not overnight, maybe not the next night at dinner at Mike's place, but if I put my head down and I just try and be a better person, that one day I've got a chance. That's the world I want to live in. What discourages me so much about social media is this. That's it. You're banned. You're gone. I will never talk to you again. And not only that, but I'm going to go on social media and talk about people, how bad you are and how I blocked you and you're terrible. I don't know if either of you know this, but on Facebook for the last, 10 years, I've had this tradition. I let everybody out of my block jail free on the 1st of January.
Mm.
I don't tell them. I just unblock everybody I've ever blocked in the previous year. And I do that more for me than them. So I just release everybody. And it just makes me feel good. It's like, you know what? Yeah, you acted like a goof on my wall and you broke some of my guidelines about discussion. And but I'm going to let everybody out on the 1st of January. What do you guys call that? A presidential pardon? Yeah, so I have a presidential pardon on Facebook. Yeah, in a couple of cases within a week or so, somebody's showing back up on my wall again, behaving really badly, and I block them again. So they're gone for the next year.
I can't wait. I'm actually going to set an alarm, a reminder, so like on December 31st, I'm going to do something awful, and then you're going to ban me, and then I'm going to be back in one day. Yes. That I did want to bring up that the Catholic religion has I think a pretty healthy view of forgiveness because it's one of their sacraments, the confession, reconciliation, it's called. And now I'm going to get it wrong, and I apologize in advance if I get this totally wrong. Now, there are some things you can't get forgiven. If you go commit mass murder, perhaps you're not going to say sorry and then be right with God. But there are certain steps that you need to take. You need to admit you did something wrong. You need to try to make up for it. And you need to be sorry about it. And you need to not do it going forward. So my example might be, I stole a bottle of wine from a 7-Eleven. I need to feel bad about it. Well, I do because I'm already kind of confessing about it. I need to feel sorry about it. I need to do something to make it up. Maybe I can send an anonymous $20 bill to the 7-Eleven. I don't need to show them. I don't want to go to jail. I can make up for that because, and then going forward, don't steal anymore. Those are some good steps to becoming, if the Grinch was in this case, maybe he was Catholic. Well, he did make up for it. He put it back, but and he probably felt bad about it. But it's the going forward thing too. And maybe he needs to go forward and after several years of being a good citizen in Whoville, perhaps then he's ready to, in my opinion, be totally forgiven and let's let that bygones be bygones. I don't think that the Catholic religion would really much like Hitler confessing. I don't think that would work. But so I'm interested in it's multiple steps. It's not just instantly your heart grows 3 sizes and then the frame breaks, because we've all seen that. And maybe and it's a little bit nature nurture, right? Because I was talking about the poor guy. He walks around and every 5 minutes he's got a song sung about how bad of a person he is. maybe he's really not that bad person. Maybe he just started believing the media.
Well, I got to tell you, sometimes your heart does grow that fast, that quickly. One enduring memory of childhood for me was growing up in various military bases when I was in the 5th grade or grade 5. What do you Americans call it? Grade 5 or 5th grade?
5th grade.
5th grade, say. Sometimes in Canada we say grade 5. Buddy and I were in our front lawn of our house, and there was a family down the street just moved in, and the younger brother, Darren, was mentally delayed. And back then we wouldn't have said mentally delayed. We would have used another term for him. And, as a boy in the 5th grade, I was using all those terms because I was poking my brother and going, check out, the blank, blank, blank. And we were laughing. And, kids can be kind and kids can be extremely mean and cruel. So we were in cruel mode. And we were making fun of this kid because he couldn't speak well and he couldn't walk well. And he was in his front yard just playing with a truck. And I was making these jokes. And all of a sudden, the front door opened and his older brother, who was about 12 years old, walked out, looked at his brother, looked at us about two houses up and said quietly, "Come on, Darren, let's go in the house." And he went over and, held his brother's hand and they walked in the house together. And I got to tell you, Mike, I felt 1 inch high. I felt so ashamed. I still have a shudder go up my spine about what an ass I'd been. And they didn't say anything. His brother didn't yell at me. He just held his brother's hand and they walked in the house together. And to this day, I feel tremendous guilt and shame over that. And did my heart grow 3 sizes bigger that day? I don't know if it did, but I never, ever used names and terms like that again. I didn't need an adult to give me a lecture. It was just the shame that I felt. Yeah. So I think people can change quickly given certain circumstances.
You changed quickly, and you've spent a lifetime teaching empathy.
Yeah.
Well, when they say, Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world, right? So I'm not going to run around and lecture to people. I'm just going to share stories about, stories that guys like you have told me, right? Because I think people do need role models. And unfortunately, nowadays, we see a lot of role models who just stand your ground, tell people what you think, don't take crap from anybody. If they give you guff, you give them guff back. I don't know. Maybe there's another way as well.
I think it's important to remember that everybody's human as well, and we all mess up. And I think that as we remember that we give people a little bit of leeway in their lives to be able to comfortably make mistakes, but also give them the opportunities to make up for that. I think that falls in line with what's going on with the Grinch.
Dave, you've said something to me several times that I'd like to talk about. And it kind of goes like this. Assume people are intelligent. And that is incredibly hard, especially when I'm driving. I assume everybody is, insert bad words here. Do you want to talk about assuming? I know you have a kind of you have a feel for this assuming people are intelligent, and it's a difficult thing for me. I work on it, but still it's a little difficult, Dave.
Yeah, a number of years ago, somebody told me her philosophy for leading a good life was assume everyone's intelligent, have passion for what you do, and get over yourself. And so I've been teaching that in keynotes for the last 20 years. And the question you just asked me is a very common one. People come up and they go, yeah, I don't believe everyone's intelligent, And I said, well, tell me more about how you feel. So you used a highway analogy. So tell me more about how you have a hard time assuming people are intelligent when they're driving around you on a highway.
I'm gonna steal something a wise person once told me. And on the highway, everybody that blows by you is a maniac, and everybody that's slower than you in front of you is an idiot.
Yeah, it's a George Carlin line.
You're the only person that's right with the world. And in general, we judge by appearance. We judge by friends. We assume things. I know a podcast ago you were assuming that somebody was playing Candy Crush, but they were taking notes instead on their phone. And the core here is assuming. Probably shouldn't assume, but you can learn somebody is not intelligent, and then all bets are off. You're allowed to have a terrible opinion on somebody, based on experience, but you need to not assume. Joe, have you ever?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, Joe.
Have I ever met somebody who I've assumed is or isn't intelligent? I've unfortunately judged people in my life, especially as a younger adult. I have come to learn that everybody is intelligent in something. It may not be the same things that you judge intelligence in, but everybody has something. And we need to remember that. I may not be the smartest person with math, but maybe science. And I'm just giving general terms here, but the person that you're looking at may be intelligent in different areas. And that's why we call this a community. Not everybody is intelligent in the same things. And we need to remember that.
Yeah. So is your objection, Mike, the word assume?
I have a difficult. I'm not sure it's an objection. I have trouble assuming people are intelligent.
Okay, so I'll give you another way to use the phrase. How's that? Okay, give people
Great.
credit for having a brain. How's that? Don't put them in a category too quickly. You're walking down the road. There's somebody standing there. They're asking for money. They got a cardboard sign. Say, I was in the military. Haven't slept for 3 nights. Need food. Too many of us don't assume that person has a brain, right? Get up, you bum. Go to work. Get a job. Mm-hmm. So all I mean by assume everyone's intelligent is, okay, that person's a human being. Take a look at their life. And doesn't mean they have made smart decisions. But on the other hand, maybe their wife had cancer and they went bankrupt trying to pay her medical bills. And next thing you know, they're bankrupt, standing on the street holding up a sign. That's a big story. But assume everyone's intelligent allows the first step along that journey versus just, oh, that guy's a bum. There's a hobo. I guess that's an old term. And just put people in categories fast based on their generation, their gender, their age, their sexuality, their religion, their nationality. So assume everyone's intelligent. Basically, it's kind of like, remember when you took defensive driving and they told you to follow 2 car lengths behind somebody else? It's like a buffer, right? That's what that phrase is. It's a buffer, right? So you're not tailgating somebody and everything they do, you react instantly. Something happened to me last week. It went viral. I posted about it on Instagram threads. Right now, it's almost 75,000 people have liked it, and I have over 900 comments coming in. This never happened to me before, Mike. I was sitting on a flight going out to visit my father, and I can make conversation with a lamppost. So I'm yakking with the guy next to me. Turns out he's ex-military, and I'm ex-military, so we're talking away, and all of a sudden, the guy across the aisle from me, 1 seat up, turns around and shushes me. He literally goes, "Shh, would you be quiet, please? I'm trying to listen to the safety briefing." Now, Joe, what would you do if somebody did that to you?
I would, as a person right now, or as a younger version.
Yeah, good response, eh?
That
So
makes
let me
a big
rephrase that. You're in a crappy mood.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't slept well. All right. Somebody's done something to upset you, an hour before, and a guy turns around and does that to you. What would your response sometimes be?
I would probably, at that point, maybe snap. Hopefully not, but I have been in those positions before where I have regretted the actions that I took, because as I look back and reflect on that moment, as we often do when we're in any kind of conflict, we can spot things that we should have done differently. Now, I would like to say that I would.
I'm going to sum it up for you. You would have snapped something back at the guy, right? Yeah, because you're a human being. Right?
I'm a human. That's right.
How about you, Mike? If a guy had done that and you're in a crappy mood or tired?
I would have respected that. As a matter of fact, I try to listen, honestly.
All right.
During those,
okay, so we got 2 different responses.
However, it is very important to understand that there are not many places in America where you're guaranteed to not have that guy have a weapon. And if you're going to start a fight, you're going to start an argument, do it in an airport.
There you go. So this guy turns around and goes, "Shh, would you be quiet? I'm trying to listen." And my first response is, "Yikes." And then, I kind of mouthed sorry, and I gave him the big thumbs up, and then I sat back. And I was a little embarrassed, right? Because you're caught out by the teacher talking in class, right? So anyway, the plane takes off, and I'm reading my book. About an hour later, this is extraordinary. I still am shaking my head. The guy gets up, uses the restroom, comes back. I didn't realize it. He'd bent down next to me, put his hand gently on my shoulder, and he said, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry if I appeared rude to you." And I said, "Oh, it's okay. I got a big mouth." And he goes, "No," he said, "you don't understand. I was in a plane crash 2 years ago. And most of the people died on the plane, but I didn't. So now I always try and listen very carefully to the safety briefing." So I went on Instagram and I wrote that little story. And at the end I put, "I'm impressed with the guy's passion and his gentleness, and I resolve to do better in the future." Now you should see the comments coming in. And they really have to do with, partly it's what he said, but mostly it's how I responded. Which was not with, you're gonna correct me, I'm gonna correct you back. It was more like stop, think, breathe, and act. So back to your point about assume everyone's intelligent. I guess I've been teaching that for so long, Mike, that when that guy said it, I just didn't go second gear on him, which is, you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you back. You embarrass me, I'm gonna embarrass you back. I tried to go third gear, which is, all right, take for a sec, assume this guy's intelligent. Maybe he's having a bad day, or maybe something else is going on. And then he was kind enough to explain to me his backstory later on. And that just reinforced that sometimes we don't have to react quickly to everything that happens to us.
That's one of the things that I was mentioning when I asked how my present self would handle things versus how my younger self would. I used to have a pretty bad temper. I'd been through, I had a rough life as a kid, and I had been some obstacles that I had to live through, and I didn't quite understand fully how to handle those things. And often, unfortunately, those around me would also suffer along with me because, when you're not in third gear, sometimes you help that along. And I understand that patience is important now, especially after having kids and grandkids, and realizing that sometimes you just need to take a moment. Like when my kids or Miranda's kids do something that make me upset, I try not to say anything right away because I understand that I can't take that word back once I say it. And I also understand that I probably don't know how to handle that situation. So that's why I was making the comment, a younger me or an older me, because it would have been far different of an outcome, both scenarios.
Yeah. Like you said, we're all human beings. I got a buddy, his favorite phrase, Joe, is, "You ever notice when you're in a bad mood, you just meet more a-holes?" Right? Yeah. When you're in a lousy mood, when you're stressed, you tend to be more thin-skinned and you're more reactive. Right?
Yeah.
I love that. That's the name of the podcast.
All right. So our tradition at the end of every podcast is one thing we're gonna take with us. The thing I'm gonna take with us is Joe's story about his daughter. I'd love to meet her one day, and I just want to tell her I appreciate you trying to make that effort. To put kindness and empathy towards animals in your life. I'm sorry it didn't work well for you. And but that doesn't take away from your desire and your effort. And I'd love to see if I can, help you in your journey in the future.
I have met her. She's a nice person. I enjoyed just talking about the Grinch because even though it's a little bit late in the season, it was fun to maybe be a little topical. And I will not forget to put the videos, even the rude, in the show notes so people can listen to what I was talking about.
I also enjoyed the discussion that we had today. We had a little bit more of conflicting opinions on things, and I enjoyed the fact that we were able to still have intelligent conversation and come to, a good conclusion, I believe. So that was my favorite part of the show today.
You've been listening to the Bushy Brows Podcast. Look for new episodes every Monday morning. Check us out and join in on the conversation on Facebook, TikTok, our website, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for joining the conversation. Catch you next time.